something unique and uh, special to contribute to Bitcoin. And it feels like everyone's kind of at the top of their class, top of their game. The community is extremely supportive, and just happy to be here. And it's a dream come true, being face to face with people that I watched hundreds of hours of YouTube on. Yeah, I love it, man.
It's like standing in a room with your heroes.
Absolutely. I just described it that way today in a text message. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
To the uninitiated, to the pre-coiner, why is Bitcoin important? Why does it matter?
I think, and you've asked me this question a couple of times in a couple different interviews, and I've always been like, oh, I should have said this. I think my official answer to this question is Bitcoin is time. For me, it was time. For people who I know, it's a way to, if you need to change directions in your life, it'll give you that time. You don't have to, it's not like you're being chased constantly. Mm-hmm. So I feel like Bitcoin is an amazing gift to humanity because it gives you the time to figure out how to deliver the most benefit to the most amount of people. That's what always yields the best returns, whether it's a financial or a altruistic endeavor, whatever it is. That's what, since I started Bitcoining, it's really changed how I think about how I want to deliver my expertise and how I want to help the public and how I want to conduct my life. So Bitcoin for me is time.
That's a beautiful answer.
Thanks, man.
Well, Antoine, I really appreciate everything that you've done in the space, everything you've done for me, and thank you for your time today, brother.
Thank you, and here's a little gift for you.
Oh man, you shouldn't have.
Free advertising.
All right.
Welcome.
You can hear me, but you can't see me, right?
That is right. Mark is backstage getting ready here. I can send him forward for you.
Yeah, you might have to help out a little bit because we have a little bit of a Zoom. What happens is if you switch in and out of webinars enough, it's just going to say, yeah, I don't want your video to work anymore.
Yeah. All right. Well, John, you could be a mystery man for a second here, and I'll go get Mark.
Okay. So my name is John Taylor, and we are here at Bitcoin Mining World for the virtual conference, and we're going to be doing a session on mining pools. And there's Trevor. I wonder if he's going to be joining us. That would be groovy. But we'll just make it. Can only see Scott. Can't hear. Sound is clean and clear. All right, there we go. Yep. Add Trevor as a host. We're going to do this. So a little bit of maintenance is what we're going to do because you can see that I have a fantastic little screen problem here.
All right. Well, hey, we do have Mark on the line here. Mark, can we hear you?
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Excellent. Very good. This is like, working out the bugs in production, right?
Yeah.
Very familiar concept, but yeah, we're just about ready to go live here. Trevor's getting his camera on. All right, Mr. MC Trevor Bello.
Oh, man. I got to tell you, just quick story. The background changed because the power in my studio building went out. So I have no power there. So I had to drive home real fast and get everything set up. So that was a little bit weird, but this is live, guys. Like we are running this completely live.
Excellent. Well, hey, Mark is just about ready to go here, and he actually has a presentation today about Bitcoin mining pools. So he has some slides to share as well as Q&A. So yeah, Mark, you could take as long as you need, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And then Trevor, I know you also have some prepared questions that you can do afterwards. So Mark, can we see your screen? Do you have the share button there?
Yeah. Am I live in front of everybody now?
Yes, you are.
Right on.
We see you.
Wonderful. Sure. I got the share.
Yep. Go for it. See if you can do that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I'll just come over to the keynote. Is that coming through?
Yep, we see that.
Great. Awesome. So who do we have on? I can't see the audience, so I I don't know who's here, but is there a crowd or you got people listening?
Yeah, we got some people here. We've got Mateo, we've got Mike, Jordan, Charlie, Ronald, Donald, all sorts of cool people here, and more to join. But yeah, we
All
are
right.
live. So
Yeah, wonderful.
go
Uh,
ahead. Trevor and Mark, I'll leave it up to you guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. Mark, before we get started, I just want to say I want to shout out Ocean because what you guys are doing is absolutely incredible for, the small miners and the large miners. I come in on the small miners side, but I just have to say, like, I've been using Ocean ever since I got into mining, and it's been absolutely incredible. And there's been a lot of FUD. Oh, like you can't get paid out with Ocean as well as you can get paid out with others. And I want to just like throw that FUD completely out the window because it's not true. I have been getting paid out on a regular basis, and it's absolutely been just incredible. So what you guys are doing there, what you, Mechanic, Luke, and the rest of the team are doing is great. And I just wanted to say thank you so much.
yeah, I appreciate that, Trevor. Thanks for being a miner. Thanks for the shout out. We're on a journey, and it's about 18 months in, and so there's a transition happening in the mining space. So it takes some people a while to get it, but the ones that have moved over have basically had a very similar experience to what you just said. Um, yeah, so is my screen coming through okay, or should
Yeah,
I,
your
should I
screen is
go
coming
should I go
through.
full?
Are you able to make it full screen? Because right now we're seeing all the slides. I just want to see the one.
Yeah, yeah. Gosh, I don't use Keynote that often. Do you know what the where the button is for this?
I couldn't tell you. Maybe in view there.
All right, hang on. Give me
Once
there.
again, guys, we are live. We are troubleshooting on the fly. It's okay. This is the first time we've done this, so obviously some problems are gonna be,
This
coming through.
this is definitely a user error.
Scott
So,
says press play. Just press play there. Up at the top of your screen, there's a little play button.
all right. Oh, here we go. Dang, look at that.
Boom. There it is.
Scott,
Thank you, Scott.
Scott for the win. Scott for the win.
All right,
All right,
take it away,
everybody.
Mark.
Great. Well, good to be here with you all. And my name's Mark Artimko. I'm the president and co-founder of Ocean. Our website is ocean.xyz, and we are a Bitcoin mining pool. Happy to be with you all here, and I prepared this presentation fresh for this talk. So here we go. A bit of a background about about me. I like everybody in Bitcoin. I think we all came from different, diverse paths and potentially different careers before this. So originally an electrical engineer. I studied in Canada and Waterloo. If anybody on the line is from Ontario. And then I spent about 20 years building and maintaining and operating power station substations for power systems in Canada and mostly Ontario and then over here in Michigan. But I basically cut my teeth in a traditional utility called Hydro One in Ontario, and did everything from the single line diagrams to the to all the engineering calculations and being on site with construction crews and building 500 kilovolt substations and transmission lines and basically hopped all around the industry at this company and got a really good feeling for what it takes to not only operate a power system but also for customers to connect to a power system because it's if there are miners on the line who are experiencing that process right now, it is a bit of a grueling process to deal with utilities and oftentimes the schedule of the utility doesn't align with the schedule of the person wanting to connect. So really got to understand the nuances of the connection process and all the studies and stuff that kind of impede along the way. And then when during the middle of COVID, I was 40 at the time, and I decided to get rid of the golden handcuffs and become an entrepreneur. And at the time, I was getting into Bitcoin, and so I joined a startup out of Michigan called Dynamic Mining, and we were doing Bitcoin mining and other types of cryptocurrencies along the way. That was my sort of first entry into the space, and I've since done a 180 and become a pure Bitcoin maximalist after I met my business partner Luke Dasher along the way. So I'm a full-blown Bitcoin maxi. I love it. I love the technology. I love what it's doing and going to do for humanity. And so I came to know Luke through this process, through a personal connection, actually through my sister And so I met Luke Daster. For those who don't know, Luke is longtime Bitcoin core developer, responsible for much of the code written in the mining space today. But I knew him. I met him as a friend of my sister initially before I knew what a legend he was. And so Luke and I became friends. And then as I was sort of exiting my previous operation, Luke and I decided to bring back his old mining pool, which was Eligius, and launch it as a new mining pool called Ocean. So we did that in 2023. So our our mission at Ocean is to usher in a movement to decentralize Bitcoin mining. We believe that miners are the key to maintaining Bitcoin's sovereignty and maintaining the accessibility of everybody in the network because miners are the ones that make the blocks. And unfortunately, along the way, mining has gone through a transition from being purely peer-to-peer and purely permissionless into a system where there are really just a handful of gatekeepers along the way called the mining pools that decide and get to decide who can and who can't use Bitcoin. So for Bitcoin, Bob Burnett, if you guys know Bob, he says I've heard him say a few times, Bitcoin is we're in year 15 of the next 1,000 years of money, and so if we are to have Bitcoin for the next 1,000 years, it needs to work as intended. It needs to be not censorable, and right now there we have some work to do on the pool side um, and that involves getting the power out of the hands of the mining pools and back into the miners. So I think again, as I mentioned, I spent 20 years in the utility space, and so I entered a little bit later. But a lot of the benefit I've had of working with Luke and some of the others at Ocean, like Bitcoin Mechanic and Jason Hughes, is that I've been able to peer into the early days of mining and the early days of Bitcoin through their stories and their own experiences. So I'd like to start this talk with going back to what it was like in the early days, and right back to oopsie, let me see here. There we go. The early days according to what it was like kind of in the white paper. So before there is a Satoshi reference here, but just looking at the anatomy of what mining is, because today when we think about mining and we talk about mining, we're usually referring to the hash rate that solves the blocks. And this is developed into a very large scale industrial system where hundreds of millions of dollars are being spent on this compute power. But mining in the traditional sense involves many steps along the way, not just the hashing. It involves running full nodes to peer with the network. It involves building local mempools of transactions that are being sent around on the peer-to-peer network. It involves applying filters to figure out of the hundreds of thousands of transactions that want to get in the chain, what 3 to 5,000 are you as a miner going to include in your next block. And then it involves creating a template out of that choice, and then it involves finally hashing, providing the brute force to solve the block. And basically that is the complete sort of life cycle of mining. But in the early days, specifically in the white paper, there was no mention of mining, right? I think Satoshi referenced miners once in trying to draw the analogy of it's like Bitcoin mining. But he actually used the word node 8 times throughout the white paper. And here are them kind of listed. And I'll just read a few of them. Each node collects new transactions into a block. Each node works on finding a difficult proof of work. When a node finds a proof of work, blah, blah, blah. You can see here, every time you can replace all of these words with miners. Each miner collects new transactions. Each miner works on finding a proof of work. Each miner, when the miner finds a proof of work, it broadcasts it back to all the other nodes. So the intent right from the very beginning was that miners themselves played a vital role in the system, in basically making Bitcoin decentralized. And along the way, and that was because in the early days, mining involved running a CPU, and there was a Bitcoin node on it, and that node peered with the network, and there was a button called get Bitcoins or generate Bitcoins. I wasn't there, so I don't know what it actually said, but there was a button. And if you wanted to do all of these things that are prescribed here, you would click that button and then you would start participating in the block creation process. So mining is like a very high calling within Bitcoin, and it provides this level of security. And it's really important to Bitcoin to keep it censorship resistant, that we have many, many miners doing all of these things that Satoshi said we should do. And as you'll see, where we evolved is pretty far from where we started here, and a lot of these things have kind of been taken over by a few large entities, and the miners, or the nodes as Satoshi called them, are doing much less of what they used to do. So, we've looked at and we've heard of, all the different technology innovations along the way. And here's just a bit of a recap of what's happened here. So, in the early days, there was CPU mining when folks used to run the nodes, and there was the Get Bitcoins button. That's how it started off. It was the only available option. And then quickly, GPUs entered the scene pretty much the same year, and they were able to do parallel processing, and so they displaced CPUs really quickly. It was in this era when the first mining pools actually were created. So the very first mining pool was Slush, which is now renamed to Brains. And I believe the second or third mining pool in existence was Eligius, which was Luke Daster's mining pool. He built it when he bought his first GPU, and he decided to create a mining pool. So Luke made the second ever mining pool. I think if my memory is correct. And Ocean is actually just a relaunch of old Eligius, and it's a rebrand of Eligius. And then there were FPGAs, more efficient than GPUs, but they couldn't hack it very long because ASICs entered the scene with the unmatched efficiency. So that's where we are today. But as the reason for the technological shifts was the difficulty, right? More and more people were starting to get in on this mining. Bitcoin was starting to become a little bit more valuable, and so the probability of finding a block and getting your 50 Bitcoins at the time was getting worse and worse and worse. Or actually, I think around 2012 or 13, it dropped down to 25. So mining pools emerged as a solution to the variance problem. So that was right. People decided to pool the hash rate together and join the pool. So know this: the trigger for pools in the first place was solve variance, solve cash flow. Right, that was the goal. So mining pools enter the scene. So mining pools main goal was variance reduction. So this was key to the viability of Bitcoin mining in the early days. And essentially, the value proposition of mining pools was, let us, it's like playing an office lottery. Anybody played the office lottery, right? You can buy your lottery ticket by yourself, and you may win once a year, you may not. But if you pool it together with everybody else in the office, you're gonna get paid more regularly. So it's a very clear economic viability play. And so by pooling hash rate together with others, you don't have to mess around with the volatility. Um, and so that was the value proposition. And in the process, and that's a great thing, by the way. But in the process, the mining pools expanded their reach beyond just solving for the variance. But they actually, if as I described before, the anatomy of mining, which was like running a node, building a block template, creating work for that block template, and then hashing it. The mining pools actually took over the two vital steps of that system, which were the decision-making authority elements, which was the running of the node and the building of the block template. So while the design and desire for the pools was to solve for variance, they actually expanded scope pretty much immediately right out of the gate. And I know Luke Daster tried to resist it early on by creating the get block template protocol, but it just didn't catch on like Stratum v1 in the early days. So SV1 took over as kind of the predominant protocol in the early days. I have a couple of graphs here on the bottom left. This is the historical hash rate of mining pools from 21 to 25. So all the way on the very left, I think it's April to May of 2011, there was nothing, right? That was all gray. So these were basically all the solo miners. This was everybody mining on their own. Um, and then Slush actually started first, but they didn't figure out how to name the pool and the block header, so they didn't appear as a mining pool. Luke is and Eligius was the black bar at the bottom. So Luke was the first one to figure out that you could put the name of the pool in the Coinbase, and then it gets recognized by the others as the solver of the block. So Luke was like really much a pioneer in the space by creating the technology and writing the code, and then others adopted his code, and then we can see an explosion in like late 2011 of pools. And by over the next 6 or 7 years, just like there was this institutional migration of mining from like solo miners to hobbyists to, Luke ran Eligius with one other guy who is Jason Hughes. Some of you might know him as WizKid, WK057. And it was, I call it two men in a truck. It was Luke and Jason, and that's it. It was a no fee mining pool. They ran the servers out of their houses, and it was just top notch. There was permissionless, it was non-custodial. Miners got paid directly from the generational transaction. They got these generational coins, and but they ran it as a hobby. It wasn't really a business. So they at one point, I think they got to around 20% of the network, which is huge. And Luke went back to focus on Bitcoin development. Jason went and started a Tesla business, and they became very successful in their own rights. And this was kind of like the early story days of Ocean, and we saw, hey, if this thing could succeed back then, and Luke really pioneered a lot of the technology, I think we could have a shot at bringing it back to life. And so this is where we started, and over on the right is kind of where we are today, which is this is the mempool space pie chart, and we have huge consolidation of hash rate across just a couple of mining pools. We got Foundry, we got Antpool. They're over 50% of the network just between the two, and then a few other pools or many other pools, some of which are if you follow some of the chain analysis and stuff done on Bitcoin by some folks on Twitter. There are many of these are proxy pools that they have their own company name, and they appear to solve blocks, but under the hood, their block templates look identical to Antpool, and their payouts come from the same source as Antpool's source. So there's a huge invisible consolidation of hash rate and payouts. So the effective centralization is much, much worse than what we see on the screen here. And this was the motivation for Luke and I, and bringing back Ocean in the first place, which was we Bitcoin is a free, open source, peer-to-peer network where anybody can transact without permission, right? That's the whole goal. That's why we're here. Everyone on this call is a crazy revolutionary for believing in Bitcoin. But the reality is that if you want to get your transaction into the network, there's two large mining pools that basically have to give you permission to do it. They could pair up and prevent you from using it, sense you right out of the chain, or individually they could effectively do a lot of damage and impede your access to the blockchain. So Bitcoin mining is based on proof of work, and we're all proud of that, and that's what sets us apart from all of the different cryptocurrencies. But the accessibility into the network really operates like a proof of stake system, right? Because I've heard many times, like, why would so and so censor transactions? Yes, they're large, but why would they do it? And the point is, yeah, I know they're good guys. I know a lot of them personally. They're great guys. I don't think they would do it. But proof of stake is a system where you are choosing to not disrupt the network because because it's not in your best interest, which is exactly what's happening here. All these large mining pools are choosing to not censor, but if they wanted to, or if they were forced to, they could do it on a dime. So for Bitcoin to be free and censorship resistant and totally secure and valuable and exist for the next 1,000 years, then we need to fix this pie chart. So one of the evolutions of mining pools over the years was the payout mechanisms. Everybody is pretty familiar today with the modern payout mechanism called FPPS, which stands for full pay per share. But this isn't how it always was. In the early days, like I have a few different acronyms here, but it started off with proportional mining, and then it moved to pay per share, and then it moved to pay per at last end shares. And Eligius had a few unique payout schemes along the way. But essentially, this was miners would miners would mine and they would submit work to the pool, and the pool would award the miner based on, your contribution. And specifically, the way proportional worked was in the time between the block that was found and the next block that was found, however much hash rate you contributed to the pool, that's the split of the rewards that you would get. And miners quickly realized that when a block was found, if they switched to a pool and they mined as fast as they could for about 30% of the time, they could switch off of the pool and go to another pool and benefit disproportionately from their time on that pool. So that became known as pool hopping, and it was being exploited. So prop mining and PPS were replaced by PPLNS, which was pay per last end shares, which says we're not going to look at the last 10 minutes, we're going to look at a much wider period of time. So miners had to basically they had to commit to mining for a pool over a period of time, which really disincentivized the prop mining or the pool hopping. Um, and essentially, this was variance reduction really, really well. Now, FPPS came along as the value proposition was we're not only going to reduce your variance, but we're going to guarantee that no matter what happens on the Bitcoin network, you're going to get paid, and you're going to get paid every day. And this was really appealing to miners because, mining became a very, tight margin business, and the prospect of eliminating any variance whatsoever was really appealing. And so this became the dominant payout system, and pretty much every mining pool except Ocean today uses that. And essentially, this is the pool renting the hash rate from the miners and then settling up with the network. And they're saying, no matter what happens on the network, if we find 100 blocks or if we find no blocks, you're going to get paid. And so FPPS has a calculation where they look at the last 24 hours worth of blocks found on the network, and they create a hash price. And miners are basically paid to rent their hash rate to the pool according to this price. Um, this was okay. There's a reason why it worked, because the value is what somebody's willing to pay for the service, and FPPS really succeeded. But what we're starting to see since we launched Ocean, and since fee volatility has really started to increase, we're starting to see the kinks in the armor, because in order for an FPPS pool to guarantee payout to the miners, they also have to make sure that they don't go bankrupt in the process, right? Because they are basically financing and bankrolling the volatility. They're accepting all the volatility. And in the early days, there was 50 Bitcoins every 10 minutes. And then there was 25 Bitcoins every 10 minutes. And then there was 12 and a half, and then six and a quarter. But the subsidy was 99.99999% of the reward, or if not all of the reward. And so all the pools had to do was just write out the variance. And variance, as we know, trends to 100%. It might take you a day, it might take you a month, it might take you 6 months, but you will trend to 100% eventually. Larger pools get there faster, smaller pools get there shorter. But what happened recently over the last couple of years is that transaction fees started to become a more a more influential piece of the puzzle, because it wasn't 0% or 0.001%, but it started to become like more meaningful, like a whole percent or 10%. And we've even seen some blocks where the transaction fees have basically outpaced the subsidy. And everybody knows that subsidy is going to zero, and eventually transaction fees is what's going to fund the mining operation. So in an FPPS payout model where fees are really volatile, the pool basically has to say, listen, even if there's an 83 Bitcoin transaction fee, if I don't solve that block and I don't get that money, I still have to pay you that money as the miner because I'm promising to pay you. This basically started to happen. There were some events on the network where there was a few anomalies, and the FPPS pool said, look, this is not sustainable. We will do this, but we won't pay you the most lucrative blocks on the network because we're just going to go to business. So the FPPS pools, and these are publicly published formulas where they have a formula where in every 24-hour period, the three most lucrative blocks get discarded, and then the hash price, which is given to the miners, is calculated from whatever's left in the middle. And the process of taking the three most lucrative blocks away and paying miners what's left means that there is money that is being received by the pools that does not make its way to the miner. And so that means FPPS pools are essentially earning a kind of hidden commission. And if they were sharing all of the revenue, it just wouldn't be viable. So as the pools are, or as the network is growing and transaction fees are increasing and fee volatility is increasing, this system just becomes less and less and less viable. So I think, Ocean was the first pool to move away from this during our relaunch, and I think, I've spoken to many folks at FPPS pools who say privately FPPS just isn't sustainable. It's going to die. It's just a matter of time. So I think like within 5 years, FPPS will be gone. It'll be replaced with something like Ocean or with our Tides model, where miners basically take back some of that volatility, or it's outsourced to other providers who are better equipped to handle the kind of volatility. So I think our model Tides is really going to kind of be the starting point for the future model of all Bitcoin mining. This is a graph of kind of how it works, and we've had many miners on the pool who have told us that Ocean is, once they get, this is the phrase, once I got the ramp up, I started making more than FPPS, and it kind of needs a bit of a visual to explain what's going on. So when you're a miner on Ocean, and Ocean finds a block, you get your percentage of that reward based on the hash rate you committed to the pool. If you're 10% of our pool and we find a block and it's valued at 3.2 Bitcoin, then you get 0.32 Bitcoin. If we find a block and it has 50 Bitcoin because somebody, you know, because fees spiked and there was some kind of event, then you get 5 Bitcoin. Like you get 10% of the block. If we hit 10 blocks in a day, you get paid 10 times. If we hit 0 blocks in that day, you don't get paid anything. So you're essentially taking back the variance aspect of the mining. And the benefit is that there isn't a middleman to kind of buffer that thing and remove those really, really high paying blocks that have those really high paying fees. So that difference is what we're calling the rewards delta. So in a steady state environment, the rewards from Ocean um, are more than FPPS because we're not solving for variance, because variance reduction is an expensive product that the pools basically provide. Now, we are paying based on a period of time. So when you join the pool, you're kind of like a new entrant. You kind of have to, you know, push your way into the payout window a little bit. So as you know, for the first, call it, week or so, and it's reducing, your payouts are ramping up to 100%. And similarly, if you ever stop mining at the end, all of the work that you did for the last while is still in the payout window. So even if you're not mining, the miner still gets paid, 8 more times. We have an 8 blocks ramp up and ramp down. And this is great for miners who experience curtailment. If you have a business that's off and on and off and on, or you're curtailed 6 hours a day or whatnot, the Tides reward system on Ocean smooths it out, and it effectively, if you're a 100 petahash miner and you're curtailed 50% of the time on Ocean, you will appear as if you are a 50 petahash miner who is mining 100% of the time. And that it really smooths out the variance. But the effect of, see, these are the daily earnings, but the effect of cumulative earnings is that Tides essentially is a little bit lower than an FPPS, but then once you hit that breaking point, the rewards delta really start to diverge, and so we have guys on Ocean like Bob Burnett from Barefoot who are running these side by side comparisons, and he sends us data every month that basically shows that he's completely ahead for his test that's on Ocean. And he's using that as a way to kind of justify the pool choice as part of like responsible, or his fiscal duty as a business owner. Here's Bob's numbers. This was taken a little bit a while ago. I think the latest data is even better than that, but you can see he's compared us to 4 FPPS pools, and Ocean is continuing to outpace the other pools in the long term. And then in most miners, if not all miners that have joined the pool, are basically giving us very similar data samples. And so this isn't a magic sauce. We're not like, we don't have a more efficient hashing algorithm or anything like that. All we did is we said we're not gonna absorb the variance. You just do it yourself. And so the miners just take back some of the work, and then there's a lot more money on the table. Okay, centralization. I've mentioned this a couple of times. Let's get into it. In the early days, again, everybody was a unique miner. Satoshi called them nodes. So think of thousands of miners, each running their own node, creating their own diverse block template. No block template looked the same as the other block template, like true diversity, right? And basically, through the creation of mining pools, my pools were there to solve for variance, but they took over that design component of Bitcoin. So we moved to essentially one or two pools designing all the blocks for everybody in the world. So we went from complete diversity to zero diversity whatsoever. And um, and like I mentioned, the proxy pools, they make it look even worse than it is. So the question is like, why, who cares? Why is this a problem? Um, right? Like they're not censoring today. Are we just overreacting? And the reality is that we really have two companies that can decide that, and who can and who can't use Bitcoin at any moment in time. So, as Bitcoin becomes more global, we're having strategic reserves, we're having nation states mining. This is going to become a battleground, right? And if mining pools are in a position to cut out other countries or cut out certain groups or whatnot, it is going to be exploited at some point. And people who say like, well, they're not doing it. Why would they do it? They're not incentivized. It's kind of like besides the point. Trusting an entity, like Luke says, Bitcoin isn't censorship resistant. It's just not being censored at this time. So trusting an entity to not censor it is essentially proof of stake. Um, and I can't see my notes on this one thing. So, oh yeah, sorry. That third bullet there, even the payouts come from the same few pairs of hands. So, we talked a lot about the construction of the blocks, but again, when you follow the money and you look at all these mining pools that appear to be different, when their payouts come from the same backer, the same finance company where the other pools come from, it really paints this picture that the behind the curtain, you pull the curtain away, and there really is just a couple of like really large organizations who are making all the decisions and basically controlling the distribution of funds in Bitcoin. So it's not a good site. We have a long way to go. The good news is that we have a technical solution, and we have a lot of momentum that we've created. So what is that fix? Ocean's fix. So we believe the only way for Bitcoin to be truly free is to create an environment where miners are making the blocks, not the pools. This is core to the reason we created the company, and it's an essential part of what makes this whole system work. Um, and then the issue of censorship becomes, laughable. Like today, it's a phone call. We're always one phone call away from censorship, right? the president of a country can call up and say, "Hey, I want you to cut these guys off. Don't let don't let these guys at Bitcoin Mining World use Bitcoin ever again because I don't like their tweets." And it's done. Like we that is the current state of affairs. But on Ocean, if we got that call, we would say, okay, you didn't like that last block, great. Go talk to the miner that made the block. This is who they are, and we'd give them a Bitcoin address. So essentially, miners on Ocean are Bitcoin addresses, right? We don't know who they are. It's a permissionless system. So, we created Datum as this mechanism to give back the control to the miners, so that miners are one step away. Miners are making the blocks, and when we first started, this was it was a very ideological movement because this is about Bitcoin's preservation. And but I think it's pragmatic as much as it is ideological, because what we've seen is that when miners are more sovereign, when miners are making their own blocks, you cut out that middleman. There's just more money. Like miners on Ocean are just making more money. And in the process, if the miners are doing the right thing for Bitcoin and making it more censorship resistant, then that just means we have a better chance of getting to that next 1,000 years cycle, right? Like if Bitcoin turns into proof of stake, I don't think it's going to be as valuable as what it is now or what it could be. So it's kind of in, you invest in the system so that the fruits of the system are valuable. And so doing this effort of decentralization, yes, it's ideological, but if any of us, anybody who owns Bitcoin, it's in their best interest financially also to invest in it so that the Bitcoin is worth something. So so Datum is a protocol that we wrote that essentially reinvents and takes us back to the early days where miners get to make their own blocks. And there's been an effort underway for the better part of a decade called Stratum V2 to basically do the same thing. Stratum V2 originally started as a protocol upgrade to fix the lack of encryption on Stratum V1, and it eventually evolved to include elements of decentralization. But it's taken a while. It hasn't really gotten adopted. There's a lot of great people working on it, but it does lack an economic incentive, right? To employ Stratum V2, the miner has to do more work, right? And why would anybody do more work without more gain, more financial gain? So when we launched Datum, we basically tied the incentives of running nodes to the pool fees. So if you and our goal was to be our goal was to be competitive with all the mining pools at our basic rate, and then even more competitive for decentralized mining. So the fees are 2% for Ocean, but if you run a Datum box and you make your own templates, then you get a 50% reduction. So this is 1% mining fees available to everybody, which is undercutting pretty much every other mining pool out there. So I want to create a visual and this is on our website, by the way, if and it's not confidential. Sorry about that. So this is basically how pools operate today. You have three main components. You have a full node where this is the node that peers with the network, and the full node actually builds a block template. So there may be like in a local mempool. So there may be 200,000 transactions in the local mempool. Pick which 2,000 go in your block, create a template. Then the Stratum server, this is the pool server, converts that template into work. It gives the work to the miners over Stratum V1, and the miners who run the ASICs, do the hashes. And then when they find the proof of work that hits the requisite pool difficulty, the miner tells the pool, and then the pool tells Bitcoin. And so they work, hand in glove to provide the hash power and design the blocks. And you can see here, brute force is over on the right under the miners, and everything else, all the intelligence, all the decision making happens inside the pool. And so that's the part we're trying to basically disrupt. So Ocean's revision to this takes everything away from the pool and puts it back in the hands of the miners. So miners run a full node on site. They build their local mempool on site. They build a block template on site. They run a gateway, which is the pool server on site. They convert the work from Stratum from Get Block Template protocol to Stratum V1. They give it to their own ASICs. They do the hash power. Basically, everything's done on site, and we've made it really, really easy. Like the gateway, Jason Hughes from our team wrote this code in 2 months, and it's just like it's efficient. It's written in C. It's 250 kilobytes. It's just like really, really sweet. And in the olden days, you would do all these things, and then you would, right? But now we're back to the problem of variance. Like, oh, if I'm a small miner, how can I do all this solo mining and then like wait around for a year to get paid? Well, this is where the Datum genius comes in. It's Datum allows the miner who did all this stuff to reach out to the pool and split rewards. So you get the best of both worlds. You get to make your own blocks and you get to have variance solved by the pool. So in this process, the miner says, "Hey, Ocean, I'm making my block. If I find a block, who should I share it with?" And Ocean says, "Okay, Mr. Miner, look, you're 10% of the pool. You're a large miner. Give yourself zero point 0.3 Bitcoin if you find a block. This guy's 1%, give him this. This guy's 2%, give him this." And we just provide the miner with a list of everybody who needs to get paid. The miner includes that list into their block design. And if they find a block, they submit it directly to the network and everybody gets paid. Ocean finds out at the same time as everybody else in the world. And so it's really just we're reducing the role of the pool to complete controller of Bitcoin mining to the entity which coordinates the payout splits. And if we can get the role of the pool down to that level, then we have a fighting chance of Bitcoin to be really, really censorship resistant. Because imagine every miner in the world running their own Datum gateway. We have thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of individual unique templates, but nobody has to worry about when they're going to get paid because they get to split the rewards with everybody else using Datum. All right, so these are the economic incentives of being a sovereign miner. So sovereignty, again, this was like very ideological at the beginning. People thought it was, look, I get it, you want to help Bitcoin, but I need to make money. So what we've learned through Bob's data and through the feedback of everybody else in the pool is that variance is the cheat code to higher revenue. Like you could think of it like a cheat code in a video game. Like I'm making $1 million a year. What if you could make $1.05 million a year and all you had to do was do this one thing? That's essentially what variance is, because the pools are taking that away from you and earning that revenue. So if you don't ask the pool to solve variance, you just get more money. So if you can absorb it, there's significantly higher profits. Not everybody can. That's understood. That's why Ocean kind of needs to get to that next level of hash rate, which I really believe we're there. We're almost 1% of the network. We're solving about a block every 31 hours. Sometimes there's two a day, sometimes there's one every 2 days, but it's about a block every 31 hours, and it's getting shorter and shorter and shorter time between blocks. So variance reduction isn't really, I think it's pretty viable for most miners out there. And when you make your own blocks, you become the curator and the designer of the blocks. So that has other benefits. Like if you have transactions that you want to get into the blockchain, you can throw them in your block and you can charge yourself 0 sats for those transactions. But I think even the more explosive thing that's sort of the next era of mining is this idea of block space design. So block space design is something that we're not thinking about now. We're not really talking about it. Everybody talks about the value of a block is the value of the transaction fee. But as Bitcoin gets adopted globally, more and more people, there's not enough block space for everybody to use it. So organizations, institutions, countries, etc., are going to want to take control of the block space today and the block space tomorrow through things like forwards contracts in order to reserve their right to access the blockchain, right? And who can design blocks? Solo miners can design blocks, mining pools can design blocks, and miners on Ocean can design blocks. Nobody else can design blocks. So if you are a Datum miner and you are making your own blocks, you will be able to tap into this other economic revenue source, which we haven't seen yet today. And I think it's going to be explosive. It'll be like going from playing 2D checkers to 5D chess. It is going to get really insane, and I think there's going to be a lot of profits to be had from miners who basically opt into this block design feature. Okay, to wrap things up, um, I tried to talk fast for the sake of time, but these are, I think, some pretty high level points. Mining pools were created to solve an important issue, which was variance. And in the process, they expanded that control to the point where it's dangerous for Bitcoin, right? They are essentially the gatekeepers of Bitcoin. They can prevent you from using the network if somebody tells them to. So we need to get back to decentralization for Bitcoin's sake, and miners are the key because as we saw from Satoshi, he talked about it 8 times. It must have been important to say it 8 times. So let's not forget it. And it happens to be both ideological and the most profitable path for miners, which is a true win-win. So in the words of Tom Cruise, your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to accept variance and make more money. Um, okay, if you're interested and you want to join the revolution with Ocean, we'd love to have you. It's very easy to mine. There's no accounts. If you try to create an account, we will have nowhere to put your information, so don't try. Just go to your ASIC interface, put mine.ocean.xyz. There's a port number there as well, 3334, and your Bitcoin address is your username. So Ocean doesn't pay people. Ocean pays Bitcoin addresses. We don't actually pay. Bitcoin pays it through us because it comes directly from the network. We have a really cool get started page with a video from Mechanic here. And we have information on how to get started with data, making your own blocks and reclaiming your sovereignty. Um, my our contact info is mining@ocean.xyz and ocean_mining on X. We also have some real-time ways to connect with people. We have IRC. We're a little slow to answer on IRC, and then Discord as well. There's a chat. So this is if you just go to our website, ocean.xyz, bottom right-hand corner, click on the chat button, and then you can join Discord. If you'd like to reach out to me personally, I'd love to chat with you. My email is mark@ocean.xyz, and Telegram and X is Mark Artimko. So thanks for your time today. I really enjoyed being with you guys. Let's do some
Yeah.
questions if there are any.
Well, I have a couple of questions. It looks like let's check the chat real quick. Let's see. We do have a couple questions. So I'm gonna skip my questions because we only have about 6 minutes. I just want to say thank you very much, Mark. That was very in-depth, and I love what Ocean is doing again. But I'm gonna ask these questions. So Charlie Wang asks, what is the risk of centralization when a large majority of the Bitcoin mining machines are made in or originate from China?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like I talked about centralization from the pool aspect, but I would say the centralization of hardware is even more of a problem than the pool. And so we do have a large, not so much the country, but we have one company, Bitmain, who manufactures most of the hash rate in the world. They also incidentally are the same company that runs Antpool, so they have a majority of the hash rate manufactured and sent to the network. So I think that definitely is a dangerous spot, and we need to get, just like in the pools, we need to get to a state where we have more competition and there's more variance and more open source products available. So there are quite a few initiatives happening from companies like Bitdeer, who are building miners, and Canaan who are building miners, both great companies. We also have Block, Jack Dorsey's company, who are coming out with their ASICs as well, and they have a big open source focus as well. They're focused on decentralization, and there's a huge movement in the pleb space around heat reuse, and the BitAxe community is amazing. So I think as there's more open source tools for those developers to work with, I think we're going to see more really creative applications of heat reuse, and then have thousands of different, or tens or hundreds of different manufacturers. But I definitely think if I had to say what's one risk greater than mining pool centralization, it's definitely hardware centralization.
Absolutely. And it even goes one step further. I mean, most of these companies building ASICs are getting their chips from TSMC. I think the only one getting their chips from Samsung is am I right that WhatsMiner gets their chips from Samsung?
I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, so I mean, the centralization goes, it's layered down. But going back to pools, Mike S asks, could miners go back to a PPS plus model where they pay the expected block rewards, but the actual value of fees for the blocks they mine, or is that what Tides does?
Can you repeat it? Just one.
Yeah.
I think I heard. Yeah.
So I wish I could share this on screen. It
Oh,
says,
that's
could
fine.
miners go back to a PPS plus model where they pay the expected block rewards, but the actual value of fees for the blocks they mine? I think accept the actual value for the fees they mine.
I think I understand the question. It sounds like it's PPS plus the plus references the fees. So yeah, I think that man, this Mike guy is really smart. He's right onto something. So that's not entirely how miners work. I mean, Ocean works. It's not PPS plus. It is PP. It's a variation of PPLNS. So pay per last N shares, and we do use a window, right? So your reward if a block is hit, you got to look back over the last 8 blocks. That's not how PPS Plus works. But we do have a product that's under development right now, which essentially is like it's kind of like the FPPS killer. It's going to allow miners to get paid in PPS for the subsidy portion of their block, but then they get paid out in Ocean Tides for the transaction fees. So you will be able to have your cake and eat it too. You'll be able to have daily payouts if you want and max revenue. So, Mike, you've kind of hit on you know, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow because that's where we're headed.
That's awesome. I'm really excited for that. So I have a question. This is kind of an overall idea behind the Tides model. Do you see this influencing other pools? I feel like while it's kind of niche right now, the Tides payout system, it it's something that other pools might decide to try to recreate something similar. Do you see that happening in the future? What's your take on that?
Yeah, so my take is that FPPS is going to get more expensive for the pools as fee volatility increases because the mining pools have to basically pay you no matter what. And as the fees are getting more and more volatile, it's going to be harder to predict through the hash price. And these mining pools and through their bankers who are basically essentially paying you, their reserves are swinging wildly in either direction.
Mhm.
And mining pools aren't like they're two things. They're making the blocks and then they're the liquidity provider for the Bitcoin network. And there are much more sophisticated and well capitalized and well financed liquidity providers out there that aren't named the mining pools. So I think what's likely going to happen as fees rise, the mining pools are just going to have to increase their fees because they have to. They can't sustain the volatility. And that will hit a breaking point where the miners say enough's enough. Like that's too much. You can't charge that much. And so miners will go back to mining on a system like Ocean where they accept some of that variance. Because if you spread out the variance across the tens of thousands of miners, it's more manageable. It's like many hands make light work. You don't need one entity to take it all over on everybody's behalf because the rewards are just not aligned in the miner's interest.
Awesome. Well, Mark, we are out of time. I want to say thank you so much for the presentation today. I really appreciated it. I really found value in this, and I think the audience can find value in it as well. For the
Yeah.
people that are tuning in after the fact for the recording, I highly suggest that you reach out to Mark. Ocean's emails are always open and they're very quick to respond in email. So yeah, one final time, thank you so much for being here, Mark. Thank you for what you, Luke, and Mechanic are doing. Really appreciate what you guys are doing in the space.
Yeah, thanks, Trevor. Bye, everybody. Yep, and feel free to shoot me an email or a Telegram message, and I'll respond.
All right, we are going to leave this room. We're going to go back to the lobby and we're going to jump into turning it tires into Bitcoin. All right, see you later. See you over there.